and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. It's Monday and Taylor should be here, but my name is Daryl Grove and I'm here instead. And I'm joined by a man who's just come back from the dentist. His name is Ryan Bailey. Ryan, when you say hello, please don't be all muffled like they numbed your mouth. Oh no!
Hello, Daryl. Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful Monday. Yes, I have just got back from the dentist. It's not such a bad dentist I go to, actually. It's one of those ones where like they have a TV and they pull it over you and they put on that like Today Show and stuff. So I got to catch up on some inane nonsense while I was there too. Wonderful.
So it's not like the National Health Service dentist?
No, so my dentist, my British dentist growing up was awful. Like they had a picture on the wall, right, of like this caricature of an old man pulling a tooth out of presumably his wife's mouth with like a piece of rope or string. That's what I can remember about the dentist office I went to, and I had problems with this guy. But this place, yeah, breath of fresh air. Quite literally speaking, American dentistry is wonderful.
So is the string an illustration of a procedure they might do, or is it a warning of what will happen to you if you don't visit the dentist?
I think it was an instruction manual of sorts for the dentist, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're fighting fit and ready for another episode of the Total Soccer Show, because we've got some big games to talk about, right? Today we're going to be talking what I'm going to call the new English Klassiker, Liverpool, Man City, Leicester, Arsenal, what you've labelled in our document, Pulisic FC, which I think is the correct nomenclature for Chelsea right now. And, of course, the Klassiker, which, spoiler alert, did not go the way Borussia Dortmund wanted.
It did not. Yeah, that's another sort of nouveau rivalry, isn't it, relatively speaking, that one as well.
Yeah, in terms of, sort of racing for the Bundesliga title, but sort of not.
Yeah, if they can feel like they're going to do that, yeah. But in terms of Liverpool Man City, this is the biggest game in English soccer right now. Do you think it deserves to be elevated to having a bit more of important status in terms of I don't want to use the word derby, but a rivalry? I
mean, it's certainly like the game that sort of decides the title in a way. Not that like it actually decides the title when you play it, but these are the two teams going for the title, so it has that. These are the two big teams air about it, right? So it's weirdly more like Barcelona, Real Madrid than anything else, which really speaks poorly of Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs right now. We'll be talking about Leicester City later, who are the actual team in second place. But yeah, like I wonder if it just needs some new branding. Maybe Liverpool, Man City, because it's not Liverpool, Everton, it's not Man City, Man United, it's not Liverpool, Man United. Maybe it just needs like some sort of new Northwest branding.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I don't know. We should work on that for sure. But anyway, this game didn't go how I thought it would. I thought this would be a very cagey affair. I thought it'd be more similar to the last time these guys met at Anfield when it was at 0-0 and Riyad Mahrez put the penalty into Sergio Ramos territory. And yeah, it was quite a lot more open, wasn't it? Quite a lot more entertaining pretty much from the outset in this one.
Yep, I think it's because of that opening incident, right, which I'm sure we'll talk about. I sent a prayer up to the football gods that we wouldn't have to talk VAR this Monday, but it wasn't answered. It wasn't heard. But I think that sort of opening, basically a goal after 6 minutes, is what opened this whole game up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it was quite odd because it felt like City were pounding Liverpool for those first 5 minutes, and it was very much against the run of play, if that can be such a thing after 6 minutes. But yeah, obviously we're going to have to address the one of two VAR situations. No, three. Let's call it three VAR situations in this game. First off, with the double handball from which Liverpool broke to score their goal. So the Premier League issued a statement afterwards saying VAR checked the penalty appeal for handball. I should probably explain the situation first. Bernardo Silva basically has the ball cannon into his hand. It then cannons into Trent Alexander-Arnold's hand. The ball breaks downfield and they score the opening goal of this one with Fabinho with a very, very high quality finish, by the way. But the Premier League statement on the action building up to that goal, the VAR checked the penalty appeal for handball against Trent Alexander-Arnold and confirmed the on-field decision that it did not meet the considerations for a deliberate handball. Now, the thing that gets me about this statement is deliberate, because I thought we weren't really making a discrepancy between whether a handball was deliberate or not anymore. Like, if we look at the Champions League final, was that deliberate? It seems like the rules are a bit grey on this kind of situation, doesn't it? And are we to say that it wasn't? The play wasn't stopped there, or it didn't make the goal not count because too much had happened after those handballs and the transition away from that? Did these handballs cancel each other out and some bizarre new rule that the Premier League have put in here?
What?
There was a ex-referee Bobby Madley. I think he said, as of this season, a goal can't be scored if the ball touches the hand or the arm in the build-up, even if it isn't deliberate. So that's an ex-Premier League referee saying that. We've got the Premier League making his confusing statement, bringing in the term deliberate to it. Oh, I don't know. Where do you fall on this one, Darryl?
So I think the statement isn't great, right? Because once you use the word deliberate, it opens up a whole can of worms. And also the statement doesn't give any explanation as to why the handball wasn't given against Trent Alexander-Arnold, right?
Yeah.
I think based on what we've seen and what Premier League has, some rules available on their website, it does say that basically I'm saying we can maybe deduce ourselves and figure out why it wasn't given, right? And my best guess is that there's a phrase on the website that explains that players are given extra leeway if it hits their hand as a result of like a ricochet or a deflection. So my guess is that they're giving Trent Alexander-Arnold extra leeway because that ball sort of pops up when Lovren tackles Bernardo Silva, and I think does hit Silva in the arm, like he sort of chicken wings it accidentally towards Trent Alexander-Arnold. And even though it's not really, really close proximity, right? It travels a few yards. I think TAA has been given extra leeway because of that ricochet. And honestly, if they'd come out and said that, I think people would be a lot happier with the explanation than just, we confirm our own decision, is essentially what the statement was, right?
Yeah, and it seems the general consensus is justice was done in this situation, but it does feel like the law that has been applied to this is definitely very, very cloudy. But if I may offer some thumbs down, I'd like to offer some thumbs down to a pair of players in this situation. Firstly, Sergio Aguero. The ball is virtually at his feet during this situation, but he kind of stops play to wave his arms and complain about a handball rather than, trying to put that spherical thing in the net instead.
Yeah.
That didn't go down very well with me, I didn't think.
No,
play to the whistle, right? That's what Liverpool did.
Absolutely, yeah, and because it gives Virgil van Dijk enough time to sort of calmly take a step with the ball and find the pass to Andy Robertson. And it's Robertson that releases Mane down the left. It's the extra second that Van Dijk was allowed that allowed him to start the counter-attack. So if you compare that with what happens at the other end when Man City tried to clear Liverpool's counter-attack, is it Gundogan, who, because he's under pressure, I can't remember from which player, it might be Firmino, because he's under pressure, he does a panicky poke clearance, and that's what goes straight to Fabinho, so he can sort of smash it bottom left corner, right? Sergio Aguero has done the opposite of that and let Van Dijk calmly play the ball out.
Yeah, exactly. And he was the candidate for my other thumbs down, Ilkay Gundogan, in that particular situation. That clearance was terrible. I don't think people are talking about this enough. In that situation, it got me thinking about how it was quite indicative of the issues that Manchester City are having this season in general, in that they haven't bought centre-back coverage or enough. They don't have enough centre-back coverage, so Fernandinho is having to drop back, and so Gundogan almost in some ways playing the Fernandinho role. Well, in fact, they're doing a 4-2-3-1 instead of the 4-3-3 that Pep would probably prefer to play, with Fernandinho protecting the back line essentially on his own.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, there's not, in no way, if that was Fernandinho who got to that ball first, would he have done that feeble little pass the ball out? And there's not a single City player near it, and Fabinho's got a long time to adjust himself. And also, if you watch Gundogan after he releases that ball, just sort of casually just strolling in the penalty area, not trying to close down anything, not trying to atone for that sin at all. So I thought that was not just a poor error on his part, but also it sort of revealed to me one of City's big problems in this campaign. And I will say, they done pretty well. And City were good in this game. I thought they were very good in this game. Rodri actually was saying he thought they were better than Liverpool, which is big chat, but I'd say that they were certainly very good and didn't embarrass themselves in any way. Thought Angelino was very good in the fullback position in this one, got some good crosses in, particularly towards the end of the game. But yeah, having to do that 4-2-3-1 instead of the preferred format he would have, I think is a big issue, and it says a lot about Guardiola and the decisions he made this summer, and perhaps even that they're really missing Vincent Kompany at this time as well.
Before we talk centre-backs, I actually want to go back to that Fabinho goal. There's an angle where Gundogan could have played the pass to Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker is wide open if Gundogan just takes an extra second and looks up. Instead, he pokes it away. And then the thing that I think is really, really impressive is if you watch as the play develops, Fabinho doesn't go charging into the box. He deliberately drops away from everybody, and that's why he ends up with so much time and space to hit that shot. And the thing that really struck me is it's a nice reminder of, in the Premier League and maybe all of the top 5 leagues, there are a lot of players who, if you give them just, a free shot, essentially, can always put it exactly where they want it. Do you know what I mean? These players are of such a high standard. But the problem is, because the defending in all these top leagues is so good, you almost never ever have the time to just look up, pick your spot, and hit it as hard as you want, where you want. This is the rare exception where Fabinho's found the space to be able to do that.
I love that. I love a goal like that. And I love that sort of split second before he winds up to take it, when you're like, go on, he's going to hit this, isn't it? Isn't that just a joyous moment of being a soccer fan? I do enjoy that. And as you say, it's quite rare, because he typically at this level should have been closed down before he had the chance to get that one off. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the James Maddison goal, which is sort of a similar kind of strike, which I guess we'll talk about later as well.
But
one of my favourite.
More English.
The low drive. Love it. Yeah.
So in the 13th minute, it's 2-0 with the Mohamed Salah goal. And I actually think this goal is more illustrative of Manchester City's lack of centre-backs. Because I'm sure we'll talk build-up and full-back to full-back, because everyone's very excited about that, and quite rightly. Yeah. But when Andy Robertson sends this cross in, it finds Salah at the far post. But if you notice, Fernandinho is sort of flailing at it in a way that I don't imagine a full-time centre-back would be flailing at this. They either would have been in a better position, or literally would have been taller and would have been able to get to it.
Yeah, I think this is a much bigger problem. Perhaps Guardiola lets on this centre back situation, having Fernandinho back there. Not ideal. He's relatively advanced in years. I think I saw somewhere on Twitter a stat about the amount of goals per game they've been letting in without Laporte.
Yeah,
and it was something like 0.6 per game last season, or with him, and it's in the ones. It's like 1.1 without him. So it's a big difference maker for this kind of thing and for this kind of team. So. Yeah, not exactly. I just think that it almost feels like arrogance, that the fact that Guardiola just goes and buys more and more fullbacks. He loves buying those fullbacks instead of maybe filling in. Is there a bit of ego in that, perhaps, thinking, we'll be okay, we'll be okay at the back? I
think you're more familiar with Man City's squad situation than I am. Obviously, Vincent Kompany retired last year. That's why he's no longer with the team. Laporte is injured, right? So that's why he's unavailable.
Correct.
Does that just leave Stones, Otamendi, and then Fernandinho filling in?
Yeah, well, they've got a couple of youth products that could come through, like players like Taylor Howard-Bellis, who played it really well on the US tour, and Eric Garcia, who's pretty highly rated as well. But it seems just Pep only likes to use those kind of players for 10 minutes in League Cup games, basically.
The Phil Foden treatment.
I mean, exactly, precisely that. And you think, Let's look at, say, Frank Lampard's Chelsea. He's taken the opposite, admittedly forced to take the opposite approach and giving faith in youth. And you had to think that if City gave a bit more trust in those younger players coming through, which is something they've never really done in this post-takeover era, instead of having a 34-year-old back there, things might be different.
Yeah, so they need their own Tomori, right? Manchester City need their Tomori.
Exactly.
And they may have one, but they're just not going to use him.
They need Mori Tomori.
Can we talk full-back build-up? Because in the build-up to this Salah goal in the 13th minute, it is that magical moment where Trent Alexander-Arnold takes a touch backwards, which I think is important. Because I noticed when he takes a touch backwards, Bernardo Silva goes sprinting to sort of close down. And then left-footed switches the field all the way over to Robertson, who is suddenly in enough space to whip that cross in to Mohamed Salah. So it was fullback to wide attacker in just a few seconds, right?
This was a wonderful move. Not just that, as you say, Trent Alexander-Arnold completely sold Bernardo on that one, but the zigzag across the field, the amazing pass to Robertson, the amazing pinpoint cross that Robertson put in there. Really nicely done. But yet another incident here where VAR is coming into play, or rather not coming into play, in that this was another controversial offside decision, wasn't it? I mean, this is something we talked about last week on the show with Taylor, in that it's how and when you draw the lines, and in what frame of motion you draw the lines. And I got boring and talked about frames per second, but if we're going on 24 frames a second, there could be 3 to 4 frames when the ball looks like it's leaving a player's foot. Where do you draw the line? Because that makes a big difference in terms of where Salah is on that back line. And let's not take anything away from the quality of the goal, but I don't know, it just feels like it's another situation where VAR has muddied the waters a little bit.
Did the linesman's flag go up or not?
No, I don't think so.
So in a non-VAR world, this would have just been, there's a suspicion of offside, but no one flags, so it's all good, right?
Yeah, so maybe I'm being a bit petty by bringing it up.
And I don't mean to accuse you of that, but I do think that this VAR thing has become essentially any time there is a marginal or controversial decision, it like gets filed under the category of VAR, and then VAR is like forced to absorb every marginal decision as a controversy in the Premier League. And I think, honestly, it's just the nature of the Premier League, is that it's so high profile and dramatic and then overanalyzed, because we won't be the only people talking about this this Monday morning, right? That I think it doesn't help VAR's reputation that there's just so much going on in the Premier League, essentially. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that also helps to highlight the inconsistency. If you look back at the Sheffield United Tottenham game the day before, Sheffield United had an offside decision which was checked very quickly and ruled out. And it felt like that process, if it was done, it certainly wasn't very transparent that it was done. And we didn't really, I don't think we even saw a replay of it until quite a bit later on. So I don't know. I don't want to take anything away from the goal, and that passage of play was wonderful and deserved to have something come from it. But it just feels like there's another example of VAR being a bit inconsistent. And can we also drag in the incident towards the end of the game? I think sort of 82nd, 83rd minute, where once again the ball strikes.
Yes,
the ball strikes Trent Alexander-Arnold's hand.
Is this when Sterling's running at him?
Yeah, this is when Sterling had a great game, by the way. He was everywhere for a player who could rightfully back into his shell when he's taking on Liverpool at Anfield for various reasons.
Yeah, I mean he was getting booed, right? I heard some booing of Raheem Sterling.
And he was. I was very impressed with him in the runs he was making. That he was finding space for himself, maybe on the ball more than he would even be normally in terms of taking things on himself. But yeah, this was the one that really sent Pep apoplectic, wasn't it? When he was waving the 2 fingers, two times now, at the assistant.
This one I can explain away as well. I think this one is about proximity, right? This is one of those ones where the defender is given leeway because the ball is just fired directly into his hand from close range.
Yeah, and I think we can justify it by saying things like that, but I think there's been instances where that kind of decision's been given. And I think that we don't really have a concrete rule where we can have a Premier League statement that doesn't even make sense that contradicts themselves, basically.
Yeah.
I feel like we just need to be clearer. I'd like for there to be almost like an NFL-style announcement on the field.
Of why it wasn't given, yeah. Because basically we get no penalty or whatever, right? We get the board that says that, but it would be nice to get an explanation. The one thing I don't agree with what Pep said after the game, where he was essentially saying he wants the referees to explain themselves. I don't agree with him pressuring them like that, but I think it would be helpful if someone from, I've forgotten the name of the referee organisation, but it has the word limited at the end because it's a company, right?
PG, whatever that one.
That's the one. Yeah, it would be good if they came out with statements that were more detailed than we checked our own decision and we agree with our own decision. I would like some explanation of how they arrived at that decision. I honestly think it would do a good job of educating the public, educating me, just letting me know why certain decisions were made. Because in the end,
definitely.
Everything is, even though we use video review, everything is subjective, right? And you're the fact that the word leeway is in the instructions, that tells you everything about how it's going to be subjective and whether the referee thinks this passes a certain boundary or not. So a quick, simple explanation of why the referee made the decision, I think, will go a long way.
I think people would appreciate transparency, and particularly for the stadium experience, where, by all accounts, people are just standing there for 3 or 4 minutes thinking, I don't know what's happening here. Even just a little message on the screen might be nice to give a rationale behind these decisions. And And as you say, just for the referees to say, we checked it, we're fine, don't worry about it, everything's good. This is quite a high-stakes game. This is quite, a lot of people care about these decisions being made, and it really wouldn't, I think it would help them more than hinder them. It would create more trust in the process if they were to be a bit more transparent about it.
How about, there's a sponsorship opportunity here. If people are standing around for 3 or 4 minutes, how about someone like Carling give away free drinks if you're standing for longer than 3 minutes?
That could be troublesome. You'd have a good 9 minutes of free drinks in this game at minimum, wouldn't you?
Everyone gets an extra 3 pints.
Winner. Let's do it. Then you'd be just encouraging mistakes from the game. Then, wouldn't you?
Do you remember the Carlsberg ads? It would be if Carlsberg did VAR.
If Carlsberg did VAR, they just wouldn't use it.
All the VAR, the referees would all be drinking, and they'd be like, "Ah, it's fine, don't worry about it." They'd be a lot more chill.
All those referees in the room in the parking lot wherever the VAR studio is, just sitting there with their feet up on the counters, drinking Carling. Oh yeah, we'll check that one in a minute. We'll get back to you at half time.
Speaking of being chill, Pep was not chill.
No, don't you just love passive aggressive Pep? Because he doesn't get furious and shout, apart from when he's shouting, second time. But when he's on camera, and that very, very, very sarcastic "thank you very much" that he gave to the officials.
Oh, yeah.
And you could see how threatened the officials, all three of them standing there when he was doing it after the game, they all looked like, don't move, just don't say anything, just shake his hand.
Yeah.
And I saw a headline earlier this morning saying, Pep won't be punished for his behaviour after this game. I was like, well, he did just say thank you very much. And yeah, watching the Jeff Shreves interview afterwards, Pep, he didn't say anything remotely controversial. He was just nodding and agreeing and saying, you've got to check with the referees, nothing to do with me. He was very tight-lipped about it, which I thought was a non-punishable response.
I mean, that's proof that Pep is not a bold fraud. He's a master tactician, the way he handled that referee situation.
Definitely so.
I would say I would give credit to Jurgen Klopp. Speaking of tactics, I think he did a really smart thing in this game. In terms of this is a big thing I noticed that I just wanted to make sure to get across. Liverpool were very clever, I think, at just playing the ball backwards and drawing Man City out, and then switching the field a lot. The reason I was so excited about that Salah goal is because it's one of those things where, yes, there was this famous incident where Alexander-Arnold switched the ball to Andy Robertson, but it wasn't like the only time that happened. That happened multiple times throughout the game. They kept going backwards and switching the field. And you mentioned it was a zigzag type move, right, to get up the field for that goal. They zigzagged their way up the field multiple times, not always with so much space, sometimes much more slowly. But I really think Klopp has figured something out here where you essentially let Man City come after you and you go backwards, but then you switch the field and then you go backwards. It's almost like rugby. You know how rugby, you'll pass the ball all the way across to the other side and then all the way back again and slowly make progress? I think that was Liverpool's game plan. So I kind of think Guardiola got out-tacticked here, because even though it looks like Man City were in control, I think Liverpool were in control by going backwards, which makes no sense, but it makes sense to me.
Guardiola out tactics. Say it quietly, Darren. Wow. Yeah, I can see that. Was that technique of sort of switching and doing those zigzags, is it just a bit more of a dressed up Route 1?
Kind of, yeah. It's like it can't be Route 1, right? Because Route 1 goes south to north, so it's whatever goes east to west.
In terms of just...
It's Route 66. That's what it is. It's Route 66.
It's hoofing, though, isn't it? It's hoofball, but it's done in a diagonal, pretty fashion.
Sideways hoofball.
Yeah. Tony Pulis would be proud, is all I'm saying.
But it does work because when Man City sort of press you, they crowd over to one side. So they do give you the room to switch it over to the other side via Route 66.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously, this is nothing new, how good Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are and how important they are to this team. But they're the playmakers. They are the Pirlo registrars of this team, aren't they?
Yeah, they remind me of, remember when Dani Alves for Pep's Barcelona was weirdly instrumental? And then Marcelo when Real Madrid were great. They kind of remind me of those two, which is very high praise. But again, I stand by it.
Yeah, love it. All good. So do you one more question on this game. Do you think the title race is over in any way? Because I saw a few people and a few sort of, banterish Twitter accounts saying, oh, no, it's all done now. Liverpool are 9 points ahead. But it does feel like history has told us that Liverpool concede that kind of lead. And I think Last December, they had a 10-point lead.
Yeah, I mean...
they've got a 9-point lead now. I mean, after 20 games last season, they had a 7-point lead, which they gave away as well. So I think we're still in very early days with this many games down, and I think that we have a very long way to go here. And it reminds me of how, when we look back at City, say, last season, we're all just thinking, this team's never going to lose again. They're just going to get stronger and stronger. They're going to dominate. This is going to be like Bayern winning it 7 times in a row. It's going to turn into that kind of dynasty. But it hasn't. It's been a bit more cyclical than that, hasn't it? And I think we're going to see that kind of drop from this Liverpool side. I don't believe they can maintain this all season long.
No, and so I agree the title race is absolutely not over. I mean, mostly because it's November, right? There's a long way to go. And like you said, teams, including Liverpool, have had big points leads around this time of the season before. For me, this is the huge joy of the Premier League and the title race is now that every week I can watch Liverpool and be like, okay, can they stand up to the pressure and keep going? Because what I've enjoyed so far is they've really pulled it out a couple of times, right? Like I think they were down to Aston Villa and had that comeback recently. And then a little longer ago, they were down to Leicester and had a big late comeback. And I find that stuff absolutely thrilling, watching teams either rise to meet the pressure or completely crack and fold under pressure or somewhere in between. And I think that's what makes the title race exciting.
But at the same time, I'm a bit concerned for City as well, because the nature in which they've dropped points this season, it feels a little bit different to the nature in which they dropped them last season when they went through that patch sort of around New Year when they lost to they lost to like Newcastle and Palace, and I think they lose to Leicester. Was that the other one? This feels like a bit less isolated than that.
Yeah, you can sort of see problems, right? You can see like the weird Gundogan poke clearance that looked very, again, Sunday League kind of. Yeah. Like I've done that clearance and been proud of it, but it didn't go straight to Fabinho. So.
Or someone shouting, "Get it out!"
Yeah, exactly. Away! They were just shouting Total Soccer Show sponsors.
There we go.
But yeah, things like that I think are kind of new for City. I haven't seen exactly that before. I wonder if there'll be some January shopping for Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, they did bring Laporte in January a few years back, didn't they?
Yeah.
So maybe they should do another go big on a centre back.
Yeah, so
could be.
So we'll see. All right, lots more to talk about. But first, Ryan, today's show is sponsored by our old friends at SeatGeek. I feel like every Monday we're sponsored by SeatGeek.
Yeah, I do seem to talk about them a lot, and I like talking about them because I think they're really good. This is a place, of course, where you can get all your live tickets for your music, for your sporting events, just about anything you want to buy tickets for. You can get them on SeatGeek, where the customer comes first. More than 50,000 5-star reviews in the App Store. The thing I love, Daryl, which I've explained many times on this show, is this rating system they have. A rating of 1 to 10 as to whether your ticket is good value or not. And
yes.
It's got a traffic light going with it as well. Green is good. Red is bad. So I'm actually in the process of buying some tickets to go and see whatever the NHL team in Las Vegas are called. They're playing the Rangers in December. I'm going to go check that out, and there's some really good deals to be had there. Also, I like to get my concert tickets on here.
Yeah,
You're
you
a Dinosaur
do.
Jr.
I've heard.
fan. Do you like Dinosaur Jr.? Because they're in my town. They're in Charlotte.
I've heard of Dinosaur Jr. I can't go any further than that.
They're pretty cool. I think you should check them out.
All right.
And they have, in terms of a band name, Dinosaur Jr., that's cool, isn't it?
They've been around quite a while.
Yeah, the early 90s kind of deal.
Can you name a hit for me and it might jog my memory? I feel like Taylor has a much deeper and broader musical knowledge than I do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you'd have heard. There's sort of sub-grunge sort of thing. Jay Mascis is the singer, and he looks a bit like Jesus these days. So they're a good band. But in terms of their band name, I think them, and my favourite band name of all time is Super Furry Animals.
Yes, it's a great band name, yeah.
Isn't that great? Could you imagine them sitting around in the room going, what should we call our band? And it's like, Super Furry Animals. And then Jay Mascis is sitting there going, yeah, Dinosaur Jr. Dinosaur Jr. That's the name.
Super Furries I do know because they're sort of 90s Britpop-ish, right? Aren't they a Welsh band?
Yeah, they're from Wales, yes, and they are insane, and they're very fun, yeah.
My musical knowledge is very constrained to like 92 to 98.
My theory is that no music worth listening to was made after 1999.
There we go. I think that's fair. So, will you be paying full price for your Dinosaur Jr. tickets, or have you found a way to get $10 off?
Well, there is a way to get $10 off
for
first-time customers at SeatGeek. I would love to tell you about that. And if you go to SeatGeek, or either on the app or on your desktop, use the promo code TSS, which apparently stands for something or other. $10 off on your first purchase.
Totally solid seats. That's what it stands for. Totally
superior seating arrangements.
There we go.
$10 off. I've added an A on there. Whoops. For your concert tickets, for your sports, for comedy, whatever you really want, people.
It's the fastest and bestest way to find tickets. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's episode. Up next, we talked about the team at the top of the table, Liverpool. Let's talk about the team that is second in the Premier League. It's Leicester City. Leicester City beat Arsenal 2-0. Brendan Rodgers has got the foxes flying, which was amazing because foxes usually don't fly.
Typically, no. It's a very bad situation if they are. Leicester look lovely. This was another enjoyable game to watch, apart from if you're an Arsenal sympathiser, of course.
Yeah.
Do you think that Brendan Rodgers is going to stop Liverpool winning the Premier League for the second time in a row?
Oh, Ryan, that's harsh. It's harsh.
I do like to poke fun at Brendan Rodgers because he's a fairly ridiculous person, but he's also a very solid manager.
Yes,
and I think what I appreciate is that when he left Celtic to go to Leicester, there was a lot of head scratching. Like, is that a step up? And he's very much treated it as a step up, and he's not approached this as like a going to a middling Premier League team. He's got ambition here,
yeah,
and he has got this team purring, and he's got them playing. I mean, would you say player for player, Arsenal have better players, but they're just not a team like Leicester are? Is that fair to say, or maybe there's certain positions where I'd definitely take the Leicester player instead, but it feels like they're better than the sum of their parts, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think maybe like the Jamie Vardy versus Aubameyang and Lacazette comparison is a good one. I think Lacazette and Aubameyang are both superior players, but Jamie Vardy just gets it done. So I also think, in a weird way, Leicester are definitely set up. I mean, here's a really good example. Leicester is set up to maximise Jamie Vardy's effectiveness, whereas in this game, Arsenal ended up with Lacazette and Aubameyang essentially playing left mid and right mid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. There's plenty to be said about the way Emery sets up his team as well. And I mean, one of my big criticisms of him has been that he hasn't really used Ozil. He hasn't used the number 10 position. We've seen previous Emery sides, using some very good number 10 players like your Rakitiches and your Juan Mata, and hasn't really done that with this team. Hasn't tried to play the ball nicely, and
well, he did try in this game, right?
He did try in this game.
I looked at the setup as a 3-4-1-2 with Ozil just underneath Aubameyang and Lacazette, but it seemed like it was all set up to make that happen. But then Leicester just forced Arsenal all the way back, right? Like the wing-backs ended up in a back five, kind of, and Perez and Pereira down one side and Barnes and Chilwell down the other side. Had, who are Arsenal's fullbacks? Bellerin and Kolasinac were like pinned all the way back. And then, again, I mentioned earlier, Aubameyang and Lacazette, they could either choose to let Arsenal's fullbacks be two on one against them, be overloaded, or they had to go back and help. And suddenly you're a centre-forward playing like extra left-back.
Yeah, it's odd here because all the stuff I criticise him for having, I mean, Emery, traditionally has a pretty solid defence in his team, and he traditionally uses like a number 10 with a bit of flair. And in this game, he played a flat back five essentially, and he did have as a kind of in the number 10 position. So, but there was no end result from this. And I mean, you could say about Emery's defence, he hasn't had a couple of key defenders, Bellerin and Holding, not playing for the whole season. But they were in this game, and I guess the plan was to try and park it a little bit against sort of the Leicester players coming forward, and it just didn't work, did it? They were just outmatched in this one.
I actually wonder if the plan wasn't to park it, but was to have Bellerin and Kolasinac like bombing forward and Ozil underneath two strikers. It was supposed to be like a really attacking setup, but
how did that go?
It didn't go well, right? It ended up being a super defensive setup because Leicester forced them back. I really think maybe this is a major Brendan Rodgers tactical and I want to say motivational victory over Unai Emery.
Yeah. Do you know how everybody looks back at sort of George W. Bush now and thinks, oh, wasn't he great? And he's had this reevaluation. He just liked to paint. That's all that George W. Bush was about. It kind of feels like the same rose-tinted glasses are being pointed in the direction of Arsene Wenger at the moment, doesn't he? He must be feeling pretty good about himself because of the way that Emery has basically... this is a weaker and less attractive version of Wenger's team. There's no there's nowhere where it has excelled above Wenger's team, is it?
Ryan Bailey, was it you that tweeted a photo of Arsene Wenger on the beach after this result?
Guilty.
I think you're right. I think on the beach kind of encapsulates it, but everything you just said is correct, because I think, especially under Wenger, the team had an identity, right? You could say maybe they overpassed the ball a little bit and maybe too dedicated to aesthetically pleasing football. But Unai Emery, I've been watching Arsenal teams now for a season and a half, and I couldn't tell you what Unai Emery wants to do. He seems to set it up slightly differently every week. He seems to react to the opposition every week, and I couldn't tell you what the Arsenal style of play is. And I feel like a year and a bit in, that's a major problem, right?
Well, on that, I'll tell you what. If you were, let's say you were colourblind, go with me here. You were colourblind and you were watching this on a fuzzy stream. And say you watch that first goal go in, where it's passed beautifully from the side into the net.
Just the Vardy goal?
The Vardy goal, the first one, the opener. That was a classic Arsenal goal.
It was, right? Yeah. Harvey Barnes could have been Jack Wilshere.
I was like, if I told you on this fuzzy stream and you're colourblind, identify which team is Arsenal out of these two.
Yeah, I'd be, that's a Wenger team.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of Wenger-esque movement and lovely passing going on that Leicester are doing, and with those airborne foxes that you mentioned there.
One big tactical thing I want to key in on is Wilfred Ndidi. I got the feeling watching this game that he is the key to everything, because he sort of doesn't join the attack. He sits there like in defensive midfield, ready to sort of win any loose balls or to stop any counterattacks. And that means there are 5 people ahead of him, right? Like Perez, Tielemans, Barnes, and who's the other central midfield? Oh, Madders, James Maddison, and then Jamie Vardy ahead, who can kind of press the opposition, knowing that if anything gets through, Wilfred Ndidi is there to catch it. And that's kind of what happened throughout this entire game, and it happened very specifically for the second goal. It was Ndidi stepped, won the ball, started a counter-attack, and then very soon after that, it's 2-0 Leicester.
Yeah, I think, did he have a poke? Did he hit the post as well?
He did, yeah. Yeah, he did.
He did, yeah. So he has useful getting forward too. And yeah, they're just such a lovely team to watch, and I've got so much goodwill towards them as well. And their fullbacks as well. I love Pereira.
Yes.
He's great. I think Chilwell on the other side is very fun to watch as well. I mean, I said it facetiously about the Brendan Rodgers question, but do you think there's any way that they are in the title hunt? It feels like they've got a very solid chance of playing some Champions League soccer next season, but do you think they're going to, is second place theirs? Is that, I mean, it's early in the season to have this kind of conversation, as I've said previously, but feels like they're very well positioned for it.
So how close are we said that Liverpool were 9 points clear of Man City. They are, 7 points clear of Leicester?
Is it 8? I think it might be 8.
It might be 8.
Maybe 7.
Hey, let me pull the table up. We'll make this happen. Leicester have 26 points and Liverpool have 34. So you are correct. Yeah, 8 points.
That's 8 by my math.
It certainly is. That's good math. Good math. So I was using math and you were using maths. That's what happened there.
There we go. Yeah. One was right.
It's weird, right? Any other team, I would say, it's early in the season, they're doing well, but they'll eventually fall off because they're not one of the big teams. But there was definitely a year where you could have said that all year, and at the end of the season, Leicester were holding the trophy.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen this kind of thing before. They're well drilled. They've won their last 5 in a row in all comps now, I think. Their last 4, their aggregate score is 16-1.
Oh, that includes that 9-0 win over Southampton.
Yeah. Statistics, right?
I do think if we look back to that title winning season, it was the same 11 almost every week, right? It was really, really consistent. And guys like N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez and Jamie Vardy had career seasons, basically. And I wonder if you could switch that out and think they're kind of doing the same thing with, say, Ndidi, Maddison and Vardy again.
Maybe so. Do you think, how much credit should we give Colleen Rooney for this Leicester front force at the moment as well? Do you think she's had an impact here?
Maybe. I wonder if it's like Rebecca Vardy's just been in a bad mood, so Jamie Vardy spent more time at the training ground.
That's what I mean. Yeah, he's maybe he's knocked off the Skittles and vodka a little bit, spending more time at the training ground. He's fired up. The world's against the Vardys right now.
I imagine more Skittles, because it gives you energy that you got to burn, right?
Did he say that he gave up the Skittles and vodka? I can't remember if he said he gave up or maybe he has more. Maybe it's one or the other.
For some reason, it's the Skittles part that I find really charming. I think giving up vodka is good for a footballer, but Skittles feels very childish, right?
Does he soak them in the vodka so it becomes like Skittles flavoured vodka? Is that what or is he just pounding Skittles while he drinks vodka from a bottle in an alleyway?
I think if he hears it now, he'll be soaking them in the vodka, because that sounds like a magnificent idea. Will they absorb through that shell? Will they absorb?
Only one way to find out.
So we know what Ryan's doing the rest of the day. We also know why he has to keep visiting the dentist.
My dentist loves me, makes a fortune out of me.
Shall we talk Pulisic FC?
Pulisic FC, as they shall henceforth be known. It's weird, isn't it? Because we're kind of being conditioned to dislike Chelsea, right?
I personally haven't, but I understand where you're coming from.
Well, I support a team from 2 miles down the road from Chelsea, so okay. I certainly have.
And I'm guessing this was about, like, they were the first team to have the billionaire owner come in and spend a load of money, right? That's the history there of why some people don't like Chelsea Football Club.
Exactly. Cynical petrol dollars first landed at Stamford Bridge, and it's like Loki, isn't it? You know, he was a bad guy, turned good.
I haven't seen the Disney Plus series yet, but yeah, I guess.
Did Loki turn good? I think he turned good. He did something virtuous at some point.
He turned good, but you can't fully trust him.
That's a great summary of Chelsea.
Because as soon as the transfer embargo is lifted, maybe Tammy Abraham and Mason Mount and Tomori and all these young players that we're really excited about, maybe they all get replaced.
Yeah, maybe Shevchenko comes back or something.
Put your boots back on, Andre. Put your boots back on.
One last ride, Andre. One last ride.
We'll get it right this time.
But my bigger point being there that Chelsea are very likeable at the moment. The Frank Lampard experiment is going wonderfully well. Mm-hmm. And star of the show, the man who was kept back and had us all panicked for the first few weeks of the season, Mr. Pulisic.
Yeah.
Another amazing... And Pulisic is the official header specialist of the Premier League now, is he not? If I'm not mistaken, is that his last 3 goals have all been headers?
Yes, this is absolutely bizarre to me, because it was a part of his game that I didn't think was very strong, because he's a little skinny guy.
I think he said the same thing after he scored that first one. He's like, I didn't score a lot of headers, when I was younger, and I think he's been taken surprise the amount of aerial prowess he's had. Yeah,
especially, there was the whole thing of him going to the Premier League and it's more physical and this and that, and instead he's just towering over people somehow. Yeah, it's worth thinking about that. I'm sort of being facetious. He didn't really tower over anyone for this header, right? This wasn't a Virgil van Dijk header. This goal against Crystal Palace. They won 2-0, by the way, in case we didn't mention that. Pulisic scoring the second goal. It was really he receives a nice crossfield ball from Kovacic, has a dribble at the defence. I think, doesn't he slip the ball into someone? I can't remember. I've lost track of this now.
It was essentially a headed-in deflection.
Was it Batshuayi he slips the ball into, has a shot and it pops back up, and then Pulisic follows it in and heads it home, right? So
it bounces up in the air and he gets his head on it.
There
so it was instinctive.
Yes.
It was a very instinctive goal, but to paint Pulisic as the big man up top knocking in the headers is not quite the situation here, because
American Andy Carroll, that's what he is.
Oh boy. He's making some really good runs. He's looking very confident. He's troubling the centre backs in this one. And Palace are not an easy team to break down with that sort of wall of 5 they had in the middle of the field there. And he was. I haven't got his take on numbers here, but they must be pretty good. He just looked really, really good in this game, and I'm very pleased for him.
Yeah, I think he's become the type of player that you need to go up against a sort of packed defence like Crystal Palace or like Burnley. They're traditionally really, really hard to break down, right? Because they have the numbers and they're sort of well organised in that they don't easily lose their positional discipline. But Pulisic has that special thing where he really can go past people. I wish I could credit who wrote this, but I can't remember where I read it. But I heard him described as an eel, because he kind of slithers his way inwards and everybody's like half tackling him, but he just slithers away from them and he suddenly makes progress, right? From wide left, he manages to slither his way into the penalty area, and suddenly the opposition defence, which had stacked numbers, has been breached by the eel, Christian Pulisic.
The eel, is that a good thing? Is it a good thing to be an eel?
If you get past people, it is, yeah. I mean,
you
could be...
Mermaid, the eel was pretty bad in that movie.
Well, being a jellied eel in London's a good thing, right?
That's true. That's true.
You're a London classic.
Yeah, he's just fitting right in. But I think that sort of midfield front 3 that he's playing in there with Mount and Willian, they all look brilliant at the moment,
yes.
don't they? And Mount is fantastic, and we know that Lampard's got faith in him. He's even played him in a wide position over Pulisic early this season, but he's very suited to tucking in behind Tammy Abraham there. And Willian, I thought, had a brilliant game here, and not just for getting forward, he gets back a lot. I think he defends more than people give him credit for, doesn't he? I'd like to see how many shots he blocked, because it feels like it's quite a lot.
I think rumours of his demise were greatly exaggerated. And I heard a lot of people talking about him being past it and being old. The man's 31, right? This isn't Logan's Run. We don't have to get rid of people as soon as they pass 30.
Yeah, well, I mean, that does make him a senior citizen in this team, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true.
Their average age is 24 years and 88 days in that starting lineup,
wow.
which is pretty young. And that's Willian bringing that up a little bit.
He is, right, raising the average.
But bringing it down, Reece James as well had a lovely game, didn't he?
Yes.
Fullback.
Did you enjoy this? I'm assuming you're also an England fan. I am suddenly really excited about the wealth of right-backs that England has available. And this Reece James performance was good enough for me to think he'll soon be in that conversation.
Yeah, it means finally Kyle Walker can start playing in goal for England.
Well, what did you like about Reece James?
Just looked pretty dynamic. I like the way he was doing full-back things basically, and he for a first start, I thought it was very confident.
Yeah, he was up against Zaha, right, which is one of the toughest challenges in the Premier League if you're a right back, is to have Zaha running at you, and he seemed to get the better of him. I haven't seen the numbers, but from what I saw, I would bet that Zaha had fewer successful take-ons against James than successful ones. It seemed like Reece James had this sort of positional reading of where Zaha was going. And then anytime Zaha would accelerate, James could match him. And anytime Zaha would try and muscle him off the ball, James could match him, right? Because if people haven't seen Reece James, you picture in a fullback, he's a big guy for a fullback.
Yeah. No, it did tremendously well. You're quite right. That's probably the hardest position on the field, going up against Wilfried Zaha when you're playing Crystal Palace. And looking on who scored 3 successful dribbles, 2 tackles, 1 in aerial battle. And I just thought that he didn't look like it was his first start, basically.
I've got one final thing I want to talk about with Christian Pulisic, and it's his budding partnership with his fellow Croatian, sort of, Kovacic. I think Kovacic has been magnificent for Chelsea this season. He's finally sort of established as a starting 11 player every week. Did you notice the number of times Kovacic would dribble past people and then find a clever pass? And I've noticed that him and Pulisic seem to have a bit of a connection. I've even seen photos of them sitting next to each other on the team bus. And I do wonder if Pulisic's Croatian heritage has led him and Kovacic to becoming sort of friends.
Maybe, or maybe it's just they stand quite near each other on the field. Maybe it's that as well.
Could be that.
Could be that simple. But it does seem like Kanté and Kovacic, the double Ks in front of the defence there, is working out very nicely. And just looking at our starting 11, there's no weak links in there right now, is there? That's a solid starting 11. And that if you'd have seen that starting 11 at the start of the season, you would have said, nope, that is not a solid starting 11. But the way they're playing, really, really good. I'm excited to see them after the international break as well. I
think it's a good reminder to not read too much into what happens in the first week of the Premier League. Because I remember recording a show with Taylor where I think Manchester United absolutely smashed Chelsea in the first week of the Premier League, right? And I sat in the exact same chair I'm sitting in now, saying guys like Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham, maybe they're not ready for the Premier League.
Yeah, turns out they are.
Turns out they are, very much so. Because you asked if Leicester were in the title chase. Chelsea have the exact same number of points, and they're in third place.
Yeah, that's something we should also consider. I think maybe second and third battle between Chelsea and Leicester could Chelsea and Leicester could definitely be something that we see in the coming weeks. I think it's great. And I will say one thing on Abraham. I think a couple of weeks ago on this show, I sort of expressed concern about him, about how his head drops a little bit, and there was a game where he had a few chances and he looked very frustrated.
Yeah,
and I think I've been made to look a bit silly there, because he's definitely not frustrated. He's having quite a time, isn't he?
Are you interested in him starting ahead of Harry Kane for England, or is it too soon for that?
Could there be a situation where Kane is... No, I was going to say where Kane is deeper and they both start?
Not the way Southgate sets it up, right? It's like a 4-3-3 and there's usually Sterling and Rashford are wide, or Sterling and Sancho. We'll talk about Sancho later. So there's really only room for one centre forward. I like you trying to get out of answering the question, though.
I know. I was trying to weasel out of that one, but the answer is probably yes.
All
the
right,
answer is yes. I think I'd like to see. I think there's some relatively low stakes qualifiers where Abraham could definitely be given a run out.
I do know England.
Right?
England only need 1 point from the two internationals, the Euro 2020 qualifiers. So there's definitely a chance where if we get a point or a win in the first game, I think the second game is away to Kosovo. I might be wrong. Where maybe Southgate could, experiment a little bit and give Tammy Abraham a start and give Harry Kane a rest because he probably needs one.
And England do need to get out of that appalling streak of form they're in right now.
Right.
100% losses in the last 1 games or so, isn't it?
All right, we've got one more big game to talk about, Ryan. It's Der Klassiker. But first, today's show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN allows you to access Premier League and other streams from around the world for a fraction of the price it would normally cost. Essentially, the way ExpressVPN works, if you're not familiar with VPNs, is it allows you to have a different IP address so that you can trick your computer, trick the internet into thinking you're in a different country to the one that you're in. And it gives you access to all kinds of content you wouldn't otherwise have access to. I know I don't need to describe this to you, Ryan, because like me, you're an expat living abroad and longing for the BBC.
Definitely so. It's an iPlayer is something I love to watch very much, and the VPN allows you to do that. I like to protect my IP, Daryl, not just my intellectual property, but my IP on my computer as well. And I use it for lots of different things. I actually used it this weekend. My father-in-law called me up and he said, I need to watch the Man United game, and it's not on TV in the UK. So I gave him a sling details, and there he is on the VPN. Watching NBC's coverage, and I use it a lot when I go home as well because my mum doesn't have Sky, so I like to use it to watch the games there. And also,
so you watch US television from the UK?
I do, yes. So whenever I go home, I end up watching got to watch my stories and my HBO. I can't, if I want to watch Silicon Valley and I'm at my mum's house, I've got to fire up the VPN.
Ryan, what are your stories then? Apart from Silicon Valley, what else are you watching?
Oh, I like most things that HBO offer. To be honest, this is an HBO advert, but I do like that. And there's I think as we were saying earlier on Netflix, there are shows that are available in the US Netflix, but not in the UK, and vice versa. So there's some shows that I watch that are on the UK Netflix that I like to try and watch that you can't get in the US store as well. Yep,
the VPN will help you access those. Also, the big thing I use it for with the BBC iPlayer is Match of the Day. I don't always watch Match of the Day, especially if I've managed to watch entire games the whole weekend. I don't then want to watch the highlights. But if I've had one of those weekends where I've been busy and missed it, I love to sit down it would be 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 Eastern. 10:30 UK time. I can use the VPN to access the BBC iPlayer and watch Match of the Day live. Also, there's a lot of stuff on the BBC that my wife likes. There's a documentary about the Brontes that just aired that she wants to watch, and we can use the VPN to access the BBC and watch that as well.
Yeah. If anyone's still listening after that Brontes chat, then there's lots of other things you could use it for. Sorry, that was harsh.
It was half a sentence. Half a Bronte sentence.
The classics got mentioned, and I got turned off for a second. I'm sorry about that. But
your heights were not withering.
No Brontes of any kind for me, actually. My wife loves that kind of stuff as well, and she's very excited about that kind of thing, and she uses the VPN for the exact same reason. And I think we've got a little special offer for ExpressVPN new customers, do we not, Daryl?
We certainly do. You can protect your online activity today, and you can access content from all around the world that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. You can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/soccer. That's ExpressVPN, EXPRESSVPN. Check my spelling, that was correct, right, Ryan? ExpressVPN.com/soccer for 3 months free with a 1-year package. One more time, it's ExpressVPN.com/soccer to learn more. There you go. My maths are not good, but my spelling is fine.
Oh, I've forgotten the one thing I really like to watch on iPlayer is Louis Theroux documentaries.
Oh, is he still doing those?
He's still banging them out. Yeah, there's quite a few available from the back catalogue as well. Oh,
and people should sign up for ExpressVPN just to go and find Louis Theroux documentaries. They are. Yeah. I think the word I would use is mesmerising.
Yeah, I love his approach. And also, I will add to the Match of the Day conversation, I love doing that. And I love having Match of the Day available at 5:36 Eastern. That's great.
Yeah.
And just to watch the evolution of Alan Shearer as well. if listeners aren't aware, when Alan Shearer first came on Match of the Day a few years ago, his analysis was, basically the cross has come in and he's put his head on it and it's gone in the net. that was as deep as it got.
And,
which I mean, I'm one to talk. I know that, but
his other analysis was, who's ever heard of Hatem Ben Arfa?
But he's got a lot better.
Yes.
He's like Barney's blog in How I Met Your Mother. He's got a lot better.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've been impressed by that as well. It's clear that Alan Shearer has, behind the scenes, put the work in to be a much better analyst and not just coast by on being a famous goal scorer. And that he may have looked at Gary Lineker and thought, it seems like you scored a bunch of goals for England. This just comes naturally to you. Turns out, no, you have to put some work in.
Yeah, maybe by osmosis of being in that room over the years, it's helped him.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I also quite like Danny Murphy. I think does a decent job too.
Yeah, he's good, and Jermaine Jenas is quite good too.
Yeah, well done, all the ex-footballers who are putting the work in.
Well done, the BBC, who are not a sponsor, who should be though.
They wouldn't sponsor anything, would they?
Probably not.
Should approach them.
You say that, I listened to the Commode and Mayo film podcast on Radio 5. I'm an avid listener to those, and they've started putting adverts in them for international listeners. So I get adverts on BBC podcasts now, and it's weird.
Yeah, I bet it is weird. Yeah, you should write and complain. Say, I'm a British citizen. I shouldn't have to listen to your commercials on BBC.
I used to pay the licence fee when I lived there. This is outrageous.
I used to pay the licence fee. I'm sure they'd love that. that. Well, one team that paid handsomely this weekend, Borussia Dortmund. They visited the Allianz Arena and lost 4-0 to Bayern Munich in Der Klassiker.
Didn't quite show up on this one, did they? And I mean, I think there's a lot of factors at play here. There's some people saying that, they had that Champions League comeback, which was very good. It took a lot out of the team. They had a couple of injury concerns here. And I think mainly the problem is they faced Bayern Munich at precisely the wrong time. Precisely when they're trying to come back from that loss at Eintracht Frankfurt last week, which cost Niko Kovac's job. Herr Flick getting it done. There's a lot of people saying... nice hello reference for you there. You're welcome.
I'm sure that'll get on really well with our American audience, right?
Well, if they were watching iPlayer or ExpressVPN,
maybe.
Anyway, Hansi Flick working with he of course worked with Jogi Löw on the national team for a good 8 years, won the World Cup with them. Some people saying he was kind of the secret to the success and does things a little differently. Brought in Leon Goretzka, but I think maybe even his first start of the season, using players slightly differently as well.
He dropped Thiago and he dropped Coutinho, and he brought in Goretzka and I want to say Kingsley Coman.
Coman played on the left. Yeah.
So he essentially went back to basics and just had two fast wingers, right, Gnabry and Coman, and then I think a more solid, just a better defensively oriented midfield with Kimmich, Goretzka, and then Thomas Muller floating around. I think maybe the Thiago Coutinho midfield was a bit too fancy. That's what Kovac was using, and I think Hansi Flick has made it a little more. Let's get back to basics.
Yeah, definitely. And to his credit, I thought Coutinho's been in poor form. He was pretty good when he came on, but I think any player in a red shirt could have looked good in this game, to be honest. I
could have done a no-look pass in this game.
Yeah, very much so. It wasn't up. Definitely Dortmund weren't up to much in this one. But yeah, full credit to Flick for getting this team firing. I thought Goretzka was wonderful. I thought Davies was wonderful in this game. We've got to talk about the big man, though, haven't we? Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah, he got 2 goals, was a constant threat. And he also had... that magnificent moment. Did you see the thing where he stretched for the ball that was going out of bounds and literally rolled it back up his body and defied gravity?
He recreated the Bundesliga logo. Yeah,
he did.
It was wonderful. Yeah. And I know we've been talking about 31-year-olds should be put out to pasture. He's 31.
Yeah.
And he's playing like he's in his mid-20s. It's incredible. And this streak, we all know the streak he's on. He scored in 11 straight Bundesliga games. He scored in every game he's played in so far this season.
Incredible.
And I was just looking at his numbers. The last 4 seasons, he scored 40-plus goals. He's Bundesliga top scorer the last 2 seasons. And he just looks like he's not dropping in form anywhere. And a question I was going to put to you is that how underrated is Robert Lewandowski? Do you think he'd get a lot more credit and plaudits if he was, say, in the Premier League doing this week in, week out? I mean, I've seen people on Twitter saying, oh, he's only doing this because the Bundesliga is a farmers' league, blah, blah, blah. But no one else is doing it. It's only Robert Lewandowski doing it in the Bundesliga. I think he doesn't get a fair cut of the jib here. I think he's very he's in with a great shout of being the best player in the world here. He's in the short running for the 2019 Ballon d'Or, which is being handed out next month. But for the FIFA, the best player, the best awards. What was that, last month or a little while ago? He wasn't even nominated.
I think part of the problem, I would bet he's properly rated in Germany, right? I would imagine that he's not underrated by German media. I think he has two problems. One is the Polish national team has never made a dent in a major tournament. So I don't think we've ever seen him go beyond a group stage, right? I don't think we've ever seen him have a lights-out international tournament where he gets that sort of extra credit. And then, that's like a showcase, right, if he can do that. And then the other thing is, I think Bayern haven't been in a Champions League final since 2013, I want to say. So he hasn't had that big, deep Champions League run either.
Thanks, Pep.
Yeah, exactly right. He hasn't had that big showcase either. So there's really only his constant Bundesliga scoring and constant Bundesliga performances as evidence of his greatness. And because I think especially in the US and in England, more people are watching the Premier League, that people just aren't paying enough attention, essentially.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think we need to pay more attention because this man is doing wonderful things. As you say, 31 years old. Deserves a lot more adulation than he gets. He's very, very agile, as we saw with that thing where he brought the ball down for himself. But as a whole, this Bayern team, it's just night and day from last week, wasn't it? They looked like they were doing that Guardiola-esque pressing. They were swarming on Dortmund whenever they had the ball. They had so much more focus. They were finding the passes better. The big problem with under Kovac, it seems like no one had the space to find a pass or was making space for a pass. They seemed a lot more structured. They had a lot more purpose. Dortmund just didn't have the space to do anything, basically. And I think they had 18 attempts on goal in this one. And, four goals is probably a fair result in this one. But, yeah, not much going on for Dortmund in here. Jadon Sancho been taken off, not being injured either, which is a bit of a concern in this one too. So yeah, Lucien Favre's.
Here's the Lucien Favre. The two major things I noticed from this game are Lucien Favre has this weird thing where he doesn't like proper centre forwards. So I don't know if you saw this, but Mario Götze was essentially the centre forward. And forgive me for using the phrase, but he's essentially playing as a false nine, right? Where he's like in the striker position, but really comes back and likes to play in midfield. And the big problem I saw is when Bayern pressed Dortmund, the easiest way out of a press is to go long to your big centre forward who can then hold it up, right? But because Dortmund don't have that, they've got a bunch of little attacking midfielders up there. They had no outlet. So every time they went long, it would get eaten alive by Javi Martinez or David Alaba. You can't ask Götze to hold the ball up against those guys. And if you look in comparison, when you've got a Robert Lewandowski up front, just to go back to the great man's greatness, he's agile, he's super skillful with both feet, he's still got a burst of pace, but he's also just the classic centre forward where if you play a ball into him, he's strong and he'll hold it up. He's that complete centre forward in that way. So Dortmund were absolutely lacking that outlet that Lewandowski gives Bayern.
Yeah, and Lewandowski, I tell you what, if he keeps scoring like this and he keeps his form up, one day we're going to have him in the same conversation as Christian Pulisic.
maybe.
Yeah,
I'd love to see an aerial challenge between the two of them.
Oh yeah, who's going to win a header off?
A header off.
Put some corners in and see who gets them on the more.
I think it would be the larger gentleman. You mentioned Jadon Sancho as well, subbed out after about 36 minutes, I want to say. And then there was a quote from Favre afterwards saying he wasn't injured, he just wasn't good enough, which I thought was sort of harsh on Sancho because from what I understand he had been injured in the build-up, right? Didn't he miss training until the day before? And then Favre essentially gambled on 19-year-old Jadon Sancho by putting him in the team for the Klassiker with just one training session the previous day.
Yeah, it was pretty much a bit of a Mourinho-style damning your own player here, I thought a little bit. It didn't even if he wasn't injured, he didn't need to come out with that comment and putting Rafael Guerreiro in his place. I don't know. I think they could have had 11 Jadon Sanchos and not done anything in this game, though. Frankly, well, actually, if they did have 11 Jadon Sanchos, they definitely would have lost by a greater scoreline.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and paid particular attention to his performance after what Favre said, and there was, I think, even on the first goal, you can see he tries to dribble out of his sort of own defensive right side, loses the ball, and then goes back on his heels, whatever kind of thing, and then the ball it's sort of half cleared by Dortmund. And Sancho has the opportunity to go 50-50 with Joshua Kimmich and just backs out of it. And that's when they switch it over to the other side of the field and then eventually score. And there are a couple more moments like that where Sancho would dribble at people, lose the ball, and then look disinterested. And I imagine Lucien Favre was just like, I'm not having this. And that's why he subbed him out. And I'm starting to worry if maybe there's a Sancho wants to leave Dortmund and he's not fully into it this season kind of situation.
Oh dear, yeah, that's quite possible. But I think even the problems continue when Sancho was off, because that left side, Bayern's left flank, seemed to be a real avenue for them in this game. I think was it the second goal before? I think it was Muller came down the flank and he had loads. He just had so much room to operate in. And
it's that beautiful pass from Joshua Kimmich from deep, and unleashes Thomas Muller from inside his own half down the left wing.
Yeah. And it was just like a stroll in the park for him, going down that flank, basically.
It was, yeah.
And then, when the ball came in, did Lewandowski, I know we're peeping praise him right now, but did he do an air shot, or was he sort of pushed off the ball when he had an attempt at goal before?
I think who scores that? I think Gnabry scores it, right? I think if that hadn't been a goal, there would have been a shout for VAR to take a look and see if it's a penalty kick. Because it looks to me like he gets knocked over.
Yeah, well, there was VAR, wasn't there? Because it was offside.
For the possible offside, yeah.
All good, though.
Yeah, but Lewandowski doesn't miss unless he's fouled. Look at you, underrating him again. Typical English.
That's right, yeah. He is my god now.
So you had asked me in the show notes, do I think Lucien Favre is in trouble? And I want to put the same question back at you. Was this result bad enough that Lucien Favre has to worry about his job?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a team who don't do well when they come to the Allianz Arena. Was it their sixth successive? I think it's their fourth successive at the Allianz Arena. And they definitely would have had the fear going into this game.
Yeah,
and I think
I'd say none of the Dortmund players or staff want a vacation in Munich.
Precisely, yeah. No lederhosen for them. But I think this is particularly bad timing, it being on the eve of the international break, because that gives Dortmund, if they go in to make a move, gives them a little bit of a window to do so, doesn't it?
It does. I'm not convinced that they'll do anything because, like you said, this isn't necessarily a Lucien Favre problem. It's like a long-running Dortmund problem to keep losing at the Allianz. And also, I look back, he won his last 3 games before this, and the last time that Dortmund fired a coach, they had sort of 1 win in 13 and 8 games without a win. So I feel like Dortmund are the sort of team that like to plan things out. I think it's Watzke is the big guy there, who they tend to have a big plan in place rather than just make knee-jerk firing. So I think Lucien Favre is safe unless he keeps losing games.
Yeah, so when they come back, was it Paderborn?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good game to have.
And then Barcelona after that a few days later.
That's less good.
That's a little bit of a tester, a little warm up for Barcelona, perhaps with Paderborn coming to the Westfalenstadion. I think, I probably would presume he gets a bit more time. I think if they would have fired him, they probably would have fired him by now.
My guess is they let him see out the season, and then they'll have something ready to go for the summer.
Yeah, and also this team's been pretty inconsistent, as you say. They got pulled off that great win midweek, coming back to beat Inter 3-2, and the week before that it was a big win over Wolfsburg. Yeah. And prior to that, it was loads and loads of draws and not scoring anything. So there's confusing signals coming out of this team, and maybe we can write this match off as it is facing Bayern at precisely the wrong time in precisely the wrong location. So
you know what they should do? They should get Lewandowski back.
Yeah,
they won the league when they had him.
He is quite good. He's quite
pretty good, right?
I think the last time Lewandowski was in Ballon d'Or contention was with them as well.
That's true. So
maybe it's a good move for Lewandowski as well.
I'm sure he'd love to take a step down.
Step sideways.
One other thing that happened in the Bundesliga this week that caught your eye, Ryan, was that big foul.
Yes. So we call this a dirty tackle of the week, if you like.
I'd love to.
This was Freiburg coach Christian Streich, who was sent to the ground by Eintracht Frankfurt's captain David Abraham. It's apparently this was a pretty angry game, but Abraham basically charging over to the sideline and shoulder barges the 54-year-old manager to the floor.
I like how you emphasise the 54-year-old.
That's relatively advanced in years. I mean, it's only a couple of years older than Robert Lewandowski, as we established. But his quote was, "At 54, you can't be run over by a young buffalo like that," which I thought was calling a player a young buffalo. I did enjoy that.
Who said that?
Much.
Christian Streich said that?
Streich said that, yeah. Yeah. But it is wonderful, wonderful use of slow motion replay technology when you see the side angle, the close up of when he is shoulder barged to the floor. And obviously, Abraham gets a red card for this because it was absolutely filthy, and a big brawl ensues thereafter. But the look on Streich's face as he goes down, it's like this. You can see the stages of shock, of panic. I'm about to hit the deck, but also I'm angry about this situation. You see the full spectrum as he goes to the floor. It's wonderful.
I want to put this in context. My understanding is, so it's Frankfurt versus Augsburg. Augsburg are 1-0 up. We're in added time, right? So the clock's ticking down. The ball goes out of bounds and David Abraham's going to fetch it. And it looks to me like Christian Streich, just knowing that he needs to help his team run the clock down, just deliberately gets in David Abraham's way so that he can't quickly get to the ball and take a quick throw-in, right? Would you agree that that's probably why Abraham was angered and decided to just knock the 54-year-old coach out of the way?
There's perhaps some logic to that, but yeah, I don't think it was the right call.
From David Abraham?
On balance, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit about the frustration of being 1-0 down to Augsburg, right? Which is maybe not what Frankfurt expect.
Freiburg, yeah.
Oh, was it Freiburg? I'm sorry.
Yeah. One of the Bergs.
One of the Bergs.
The free one.
So, yeah, David Abraham gets suspended for that. And we're not condoning that behaviour on the Total Soccer Show. Is that right?
No, we're not. But just if you do have to look that one up on Twitter, do wait for this slow-motion replay, because as much as I don't want to savour the aforementioned 54-year-old hitting the ground, it is quite fun.
Oh, Christian Streich. It's kind of an ironic name as well, right? Because you got
so much strife from Mr. Streich there. Yeah.
Ryan, anything else from the weekend that you want to give a shout out to or a mention before we shut this thing down?
No, unless you want to talk about my Netflix habits. No, I think we're good.
I think we already did.
Yeah.
In that case, I will say, Ryan Bailey, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Never a chore.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again very soon.